Do you know what to do to stop hurting from your partner's unfair behavior? How to turn the situation around 180 degrees and make him think about you? The answer lies not in chasing him, nor in pleading for his affection, but in understanding the deeper movements of the soul. When we are wounded in love, we believe our pain comes only from the other's betrayal or absence. Yet beneath this lies a greater truth. We have unknowingly handed our inner power to the beloved, allowing him to become the keeper of our worth. The more we run after him, the more we confirm to ourselves that our wholeness depends on his return. And so he retreats further, for the soul instinctively resists being chained by another's need. But the psyche has its own wisdom. What is truly yours is never secured by pursuit, but by embodiment. When you withdraw your projections and gather your energy back to yourself, you awaken a forgotten radiance. You turn from chasing shadows to tending the fire within, through silence, through self-discovery, through honoring what makes you alive. In this turning, the wound becomes initiation, a painful yet sacred call to remember your own center. It is here, in your self-possession, that the shift occurs. No longer do you wait helplessly for his attention. Rather, you stand as one complete. And it is this wholeness that stirs something in him. He begins to think of you, not because you have demanded it, but because the mystery of your being calls to him. Thus, to stop hurting is not to harden the heart, nor to chase in despair, but to return to yourself. Love, when transmuted, becomes strength. And from this strength, attraction flows naturally. For what you embody in fullness will always draw others near. Whether or not he returns, you will have found the deeper love, the one within. Consider Anna, a woman who once gave all of herself to a man who grew increasingly distant. Each time he ignored her messages or dismissed her feelings, she tried harder to please him, hoping her effort would restore what was slipping away. The more she chased, the colder he became, and the deeper her pain grew. One evening, after a particularly harsh silence from him, Anna realized she was no longer only grieving his absence. She was grieving the loss of herself. This recognition became the turning point. Instead of sending yet another message, she closed her phone and sat quietly, asking what her soul needed. The answer was not him. It was her own attention. Anna began to shift her energy inward. She returned to painting, a passion she had abandoned during the relationship. She spent time with friends who nourished her spirit, and she allowed herself to feel the richness of life beyond his shadow. Slowly, her heart steadied. She stopped waiting by the phone, and instead began waiting for herself, listening to her dreams, her body, her joy. It was in this transformation that something remarkable happened. He began reaching out again, not because she begged, but because her silence carried weight. Her presence had become magnetic. Yet by the time he tried to chase her, Anna had changed. She no longer needed his attention to feel whole. Whether or not he returned was secondary, for she had rediscovered her own center. To chase a man is to place your soul in exile, as though his footsteps carried the keys to your wholeness. But what flees from pursuit does not vanish out of cruelty. It vanishes because the unconscious resists being bound by need. A man is not drawn to the one who clings, but to the one who radiates an inner axis of strength. This is not manipulation, but archetypal law. The psyche is compelled toward what appears whole. What, then, should you do instead of chasing? You must become rooted in yourself. Jung taught that the images of our longing are projections of the self, fragments of our own unlived depths. When you run after him, you are really chasing the reflection of your own soul. The task is not to catch him, but to call those fragments home. Begin by withdrawing your energy from the endless cycle of waiting, pleading, and fearing. Turn that energy inward. Nourish your inner life, your passions, your body, your friendships, your creative fire. Dream and listen to the symbols that rise from within, for they guide you toward wholeness. As you cultivate yourself, you cease to send him the silent message, "I need you to complete me." Instead, your presence begins to speak, "I am complete already." It is this transformation that awakens pursuit. He may feel an unfamiliar pull, a curiosity, even an anxiety at your absence. The magnetic field shifts when you no longer orbit around him. He begins to sense your gravity. Whether he returns is secondary, for by then you will have become sovereign, anchored in the self, radiant in your own mystery. Therefore, do not chase. Embody. The one who stands whole does not beg to be followed. She becomes the path that others cannot help but seek. He may chase you, but more importantly, you will no longer be chasing anyone, for you will have found what was missing all along, yourself. When a woman chases a man, she believes she is fighting for love, yet in truth, she is abandoning herself. For to run after him is to proclaim, even unconsciously, "You are the keeper of my worth." The psyche feels this imbalance, and the other withdraws, not always out of malice, but because no soul wishes to carry the burden of another's forgotten center. So what should you do instead? The secret is not pursuit, but presence. A man is drawn not to need, but to wholeness. Jung observed that what we seek in another is often a projection of our own unlived depths. When you chase, you are really chasing your own reflection upon him. But when you reclaim those fragments and live them yourself, the magnetism shifts. Do this. Gather your energy inward. Stop feeding the cycle of anxious calls, texts, and efforts to prove yourself. Instead, cultivate your own life, your passions, your body, your dreams. Return to what makes your spirit luminous. Love yourself so fully that your silence speaks louder than any plea. In this, you cease to send him the message of dependence and begin to radiate the message of mystery. It is this mystery that awakens pursuit. He will sense that you are no longer orbiting around him, that your axis is firmly within yourself. Such a woman does not beg, she attracts. Her presence becomes a gravitational force, one he cannot easily escape. Whether he follows is not guaranteed, but by the time he does, she will have become sovereign enough to choose if she even wants him back. Do not chase. Instead, embody the fullness of who you are. For the woman who remembers her own center ceases to be the hunter and becomes the flame. And the flame does not run after the moth. It simply burns, and the moth cannot help but draw near. Take, for instance, Elena. She had been with a man who often dismissed her feelings, leaving her in a constant state of waiting for his calls, for his affection, for the smallest sign of warmth. Every time he pulled away, she ran after him, believing that her love would convince him to stay. But with every pursuit, he seemed further out of reach, and the pain of rejection grew unbearable. One day, after another unanswered message, Elena felt the emptiness inside her deepen. She realized she was no longer simply mourning his neglect. She was mourning the parts of herself she had abandoned for him. This moment of awareness was the seed of change. She decided not to chase anymore. Instead, she began to nourish herself. She returned to her old love of writing poetry. She joined a dance class, and she reconnected with friends who reminded her of her worth. As weeks passed, her energy shifted. She laughed more, she felt lighter, and she stopped checking her phone every hour. And then, he began to notice. His messages grew frequent, his tone softer, almost as if he could sense that the gravity had returned to her. Yet Elena no longer needed his attention to feel whole. Whether he pursued her or not, She had found something greater, the joy of her own becoming. Don't chase him. Do this, and he will chase you. The words sound simple, yet the act of chasing rarely begins with the man in front of you. It often begins in childhood. Many women who find themselves desperately running after a man's attention are, in truth, repeating an older story, the longing for the parent who was absent, distracted, or inconsistent. If a father was distant, critical, or emotionally unavailable, a daughter may grow into a woman who unconsciously seeks to win the love she once missed. The man becomes a mirror of the father, aloof, withholding, difficult to please, and she feels compelled to prove herself worthy of his affection. If a mother offered love only conditionally, the child learns, I must perform, chase, and adapt in order to be loved. These patterns sink into the unconscious, and later in life, they awaken whenever love is at stake. This is why chasing a man feels so urgent. It is not only about him. It is about the little girl within who still aches to be seen, held, and chosen. But the tragedy of chasing is that it pushes love further away. The adult woman abandons her own center in the same way she once felt abandoned, and the cycle repeats. What should she do instead? She must begin the work of turning inward, of becoming the parent she never had. This means giving herself the care, attention, and patience that were missing. Instead of chasing, she learns to sit with her own feelings, to say, I see you. I will not leave you. You are enough. The more she heals that inner child, the less she feels compelled to pursue men who withdraw. And paradoxically, it is in this healing that attraction shifts. A man is drawn not to desperation, but to a woman rooted in herself. When she no longer runs after him, but stands firmly in her own worth, he feels the pull of her gravity. He may chase her, but more importantly, she will no longer be chasing the ghost of her father, nor the echo of her mother's conditions. She will have returned to herself. To break free from the cycle of chasing, the woman must first recognize that her longing is not a flaw but a message. The pain of running after an indifferent man is the voice of her younger self, calling for attention. Instead of silencing this voice with more pursuit, she must pause and listen. Healing begins not in the arms of another, but in the sanctuary of her own presence. The first step is awareness. Notice the patterns, how your heart races when he ignores you, how your mind creates endless stories to explain his absence, how you feel the urge to prove your worth. Ask yourself, whose love am I really chasing? My partner's, or my father's, or my mother's? Such questions unmask the hidden archetype, the inner child repeating her old script. The second step is nurturing. Imagine the little girl within you. She does not need to chase anyone. She only needs to be held, reassured, and seen. Speak to her silently. I am here. I will not abandon you as you once felt abandoned. This practice may feel strange at first, but it repairs the split in the psyche. The woman becomes both child and caretaker, healing the wound by offering herself what she once lacked. The third step is embodiment. Once the inner child feels safer, the adult woman can redirect her energy toward growth. Instead of waiting for a man's call, she invests in her passions, her body, her friendships, her art. Each act of self-nourishment says to the unconscious, I am whole in myself. Over time, this creates a powerful shift in the outer world. And here lies the paradox. When the woman stops chasing, she begins to radiate. The man, sensing her new wholeness, may be drawn back, curious about the mystery he once took for granted. But whether he returns or not is no longer the point. The woman, no longer bound by childhood patterns, discovers freedom. This is the secret. Do not chase him. Heal the child within, Embody your own fullness, and love will find its way toward you. Not because you begged for it, but because you became the source of it. Isabella had carried the wound of neglect since childhood. Her father was rarely warm, often lost in work or criticism, and her mother's affection seemed tied to performance and obedience. As a girl, she learned, if I do enough, maybe I will be loved. That belief followed her into adulthood, shaping her relationships in ways she did not yet understand. When she met Daniel, the cycle repeated. At first, his charm and attention made her feel alive. But as time went on, he became distant, unpredictable, and often cold. Isabella responded the only way she knew, by chasing harder. She sent long messages, tried to anticipate his moods, and bent herself in every direction just to hold his gaze. Every silence from him felt like the echo of her father's absence. The breaking point came one evening at a friend's gathering. She stood only a few steps away as Daniel leaned in close to another woman, laughing, touching her arm, his eyes gleaming in a way Isabella hadn't seen for herself in months. In that instant, the illusion cracked. It wasn't only jealousy, it was recognition. She saw, with painful clarity, that she had become the little girl again, waiting desperately for the crumbs of someone else's attention while betraying her own worth. Something shifted inside her. Have you ever felt anything like Isabella at this moment? When your partner hurt you because of someone else? If so, write in the comments what it was and how you got out of it, so that you can share your experience with those who need it right now. Or share your pain. There is a space for healing here, so we will listen carefully to you. So, that night, she did not chase. She did not write him a pleading message or demand an explanation. Instead, she sat in silence and let the pain sink deep enough to speak. For the first time, she told herself, no more. I will not run after what diminishes me. In the weeks that followed, Isabella did not immediately feel free. At first, she felt hollow, as though someone had pulled the ground from beneath her feet. Nights were the hardest, lying awake replaying the image of Daniel leaning toward that other woman, her chest tightening until she could hardly breathe. For days, she walked through life in a fog, going to work, smiling politely, but inside she was collapsing. The pain was not only about Daniel. It was the reopening of an old wound, the ancient grief of never feeling enough for her father, of always being the one who had to chase. She cried often, sometimes in silence, sometimes until her body shook, feeling powerless, abandoned, and unworthy. Yet in that very darkness, a strange clarity grew. She realized that no man, no matter how charming, could heal the ache she carried from childhood. Only she could turn toward that forgotten part of herself. It was not a quick revelation, but a slow unfolding, like dawn breaking after a long night. At first, she forced herself to pick up her paintbrushes, and her hands trembled as colors bled onto the canvas. Red for anger, blue for sorrow, gold for the faint hope of light. She began saying yes when friends invited her out, even when she wanted to hide, and their laughter slowly stitched her back together. And in quiet moments, she wrote letters to the little girl inside her, the one who had always longed for love, telling her gently, I see you now. I will not abandon you. You are enough. The process was not quick, nor was it linear. Some days she felt strong, radiant even. Other days the old ache returned with full force. But through this long wrestling with her pain, Isabella began to feel something shift. She was no longer running after Daniel, nor after the ghost of her father's approval. She was beginning, piece by piece, to gather her soul back into her own hands. As Isabella's inner work deepened, her energy began to change. The heavy fog of despair gradually lifted, though not all at once. There were mornings she woke with tears already in her eyes, longing for the comfort of his presence. But even in the ache, she noticed something new, a growing ability to sit with her pain without being consumed by it. She no longer rushed to send messages or rehearse conversations in her mind. Instead, she breathed through the silence, allowing the wound to speak and then, slowly, to soften. When Daniel realized she was no longer orbiting around him, his behavior shifted. At first, he grew curious, then unsettled. He sent casual texts, little attempts to pull her back into the old pattern. "Miss you. Let's hang out. You've been quiet." In the past, Isabella would have seized on such crumbs of attention, but now she paused. She noticed how the messages carried no depth, only the same evasiveness that once left her starving. For the first time, she didn't reply immediately. Days went by, and she realized she didn't feel desperate anymore. Her friends began to comment on the change. "You look lighter," one told her over coffee. Another said, "It's like you're glowing again." Isabella herself felt it too. When she painted, the colors no longer bled only sorrow. They began to carry vibrancy, even joy. When she laughed with friends, it wasn't forced but alive. Slowly, her world expanded beyond the narrow circle of waiting for Daniel. When he finally asked to meet, she agreed, but not with the trembling anxiety of before. Sitting across from him, she listened as he spoke, but something inside had shifted. The spell was broken. She could see him clearly now, not as the savior of her loneliness, not as the father she could never win, but simply as a man. Flawed, charming, distant, uncertain. And for the first time, she did not feel the urge to chase. Walking away from that meeting, Isabella felt an unfamiliar strength. It wasn't triumph over him. It was reunion with herself. She realized she had a choice she never thought possible, to let go without collapsing. Whether Daniel returned or not no longer defined her. She had touched something far deeper, the steady ground of her own worth. And in that discovery, she understood, the true turning point was never about making him chase. It was about ceasing to chase love in places it was never meant to be found. Isabella's journey shows us a profound truth. A man begins to pursue you when you stop pursuing him. For months, she had poured her energy outward, messages, gestures, forgiveness, while receiving little in return. The more she chased, the more Daniel pulled away. But the turning point came when she saw him openly flirt with another woman. That pain forced her into clarity. If she continued chasing, she would only keep betraying herself. The first step, then, is to stop running after him. This does not mean punishing or manipulating. It means pulling back your energy and refusing to feed the cycle of imbalance. Like Isabella, you must let silence do the work that pleading never could. Your absence becomes a mirror in which he sees his own behavior reflected. The second step is to turn that energy inward. Isabella began painting again, surrounding herself with friends, and writing to the little girl within her who had always felt unseen. At first, she was not glowing. She was broken, grieving, struggling to breathe through the pain. But by staying with that pain instead of numbing it with pursuit, she began to rebuild her center. You, too, must allow yourself this season of stillness and healing. It is not quick. It hurts. But it is the soil in which new strength grows. The third step is embodiment. A woman who no longer begs, but instead lives fully, becomes magnetic. Isabella did not need to post pictures to make Daniel jealous or invent strategies to lure him back. Her wholeness itself became the attraction. He saw her painting, laughing, shining again, not for him, but for herself. And suddenly, the dynamic reversed. If you want him to start running after you, you must dare to step out of the role of the chaser. You must stand in your own gravity. That means reclaiming your time, your passions, your friendships, your silence. He will sense the shift, because nothing is more attractive than a woman who no longer seeks validation outside herself. And here is the paradox Isabella discovered. Once she stopped chasing, he began. But by then, she had become strong enough to choose. Was his love worthy of her, or was her own light enough? That is the place of true power. Isabella's story is not just about her. It is a mirror for every woman who has ever chased love at the cost of herself. The pain of longing, the weight of childhood wounds, the cycle of chasing and being rejected, all of these are not accidents, but patterns rooted deep in the psyche. When you begin to see them clearly, you reclaim your power. If you, too, want to stop repeating the same patterns, if you want to grow with us, explore the depths of your own psychology and uncover not only the causes of your pain, but also the hidden reasons behind your partner's behavior. Then I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Together, we will learn how to turn wounds into wisdom, need into strength, and longing into love that begins within.